Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. Hopefully, guys, just let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm talking about stress, and then I tried to turn my camera on. It wouldn't work in my other office. So that's one of the reasons why I'm broadcasting in a different office. All right. So, but the good thing is I get to choose if I want to call it stress or not. I'm not going to call it stress. I'm not going to do that. Okay. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for the comment, Betsy. All right, so the title of tonight is Do You Have Stress? Got stress? Here's how it can kill you. So I'm going to be talking a lot about mental stress. Really, really, really important. And hopefully, guys, some things that can really help you out with this. So I hope you find a lot of value with what I'm going to talk about tonight. Because we're going to talk to you a little bit about stress from a lot different perspective, especially when we talk about mental stress, especially. So, guys, coming up, I know that we had our inflammation talk last week. It was awesome. Our next one is going to be on Tuesday, June 25th at 6 o'clock p.m. This is an in-person event. So if you're from the Chicagoland area, please get to that event because we're going to talk about inflammatory triggers. And yes, you'll get a little bit of better understanding of stress and things like that, how it affects your hormones, how it affects the gastrointestinal system, things like that. And I'm going to talk a lot about that specifically tonight as well. So get to that. If you're from the Chicagoland area, please get to that, especially for people who really, really suffer with issues when it comes to weight loss resistance, problems with the immune system, hormone issues, thyroid disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, yes, hormone imbalance. Guys, we don't cure those. We don't fix those. What we do is we identify what is stressing the body out because the natural state of the body is to be healthy. Okay. That's one of the biggest things. So, guys, if you want to work with us individually, one-on-one in person, that's the event that you want to get to is on Tuesday, June 25th at 6 o'clock p.m. And guys, one of the reasons why is I'm going to show you, if you look at this, this is a stool test of someone who had suffered with unbelievable bloating and gastrointestinal issues her whole life. And we are talking about many, many decades. Couldn't find any kind of fix or any kind of reason for it. But guys, if you look at her stool test, this is you'll notice this is a massive chronic stressor that's taking place inside the body. But you can see even looking from this stool test that she is carrying a lot of pathogenic bacteria, multiple forms of yeast that's going on, and is even carrying a parasite as well, and couldn't figure out why she had so much belly bloating and gastrointestinal issues and things like that. Guys, this is a huge stressor on her body. And you can see when you look at this, so many different things, guys. If you want to lower stressors, then one of the things you have to do is you got to lower down what is irritating the immune system. And there were multiple things that were irritating the immune system, which is why she had so many different issues that were going on. In fact, even 29 different food allergies. So a lot of leaky gut type things, a lot of yeast, a lot of pathogenic bacteria, and then also carrying a parasite as well. So you got to understand what is irritating my immune system. We talk a little bit more about that at the inflammation event. So guys, if you want to be at that inflammation event, all you have to do is just visit my link tree. I think I have it in the, it's on every single one of my page. So just click on that link. You'll be able to see it. And if you click on that, you'll see right at the top, the inflammation event. That'll carry you straight to Eventbrite, and you can register for that event coming up. I believe on June 25th, that's going to be a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock sharp. Yes, it's an in-person event. We start promptly at 6 o'clock out of respect for other people's time. We know that your time is valuable as well. And I know that sometimes we do have people who walk in a little bit late. And I understand if you're driving from a long distance, but please, guys, if you register for it, please make sure that you show up on time. I just asked you this, okay? All right. So I'm going to talk about stress. I'm going to help you understand stress from a little bit different perspective, especially. But let me ask you a question. Who stresses out more, men or women? I asked this question in the inflammation event. Everyone says women. And then I say, well, what stresses women out the most? And immediately they say they're men. And I agree with that as well. Women do stress out. However, it's not a character fault or anything like that. It's just how you're created hormonally. So women do stress out more than men. And there's a lot more devastating effect when you talk about mental stress, especially when you talk about your hormones. So let me say just one thing real quick about stress is that being stressed, guys, it's not a badge of honor. It is not a badge of honor. Have you ever met those people and they're just like, oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, I'm so stressed, as if we're supposed to be proud of them. But if you know the negative consequences of too much stress on the body, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, if you understand the negative consequence of stress, how it affects the gastrointestinal system, how it affects your hormones, how it affects your sleep, then and if you know that it's something that's negative, I wouldn't be broadcasting that that's something good. That's like wearing a t-shirt that says, hey, I'm an alcoholic, I'm amazing. So being stressed, guys, is not a badge of honor, and it's not something that we need to be proud of if we do it. However, I want to ask you a question as we get into this, and I want you to be perfectly honest with yourself. Do you suffer from self-importance? Okay. And I'm going to make an admission. I have suffered from self-importance. And what do you mean, Dr. Nate, about self-importance? Well, it's this. It's thinking that you are at the center of the universe and everyone is hanging on to your words and that everyone is looking at you. And I've realized no one's looking at you. Nobody cares as much as you think that they care. And it's one of the reasons why people are afraid to go into a gym, is because they think everybody's looking at them. And that's simply not the case. Most people do suffer from self-importance. And if you suffer from self-importance and everyone else is, then they're worried about themselves. But if you suffer from self-importance, you're not the center of the universe. And most people don't care as much as what you think that they do. And I wish that's actually good news, because maybe that'll get you to calm and relax a little bit. However, I'm going to preface stress by saying this: not all stress is bad, because your body does need a little bit of stress. And the example that I'm going to show you is weightlifting. Okay. If you never, ever stressed your muscles, they would never grow. So you need some stress in your life in order to grow. And that's in a lot of different areas. But if you talk about a physical perspective, you need some stress on your muscles in order to help them adapt, in order to help them grow as well. And so you do need a little bit of stress in order for adaptation to occur. But I want you to think of this. If you stress muscles, you cause them to grow and you cause them to get stronger. But if you stress muscles too much, you end up injuring them. So that's why if you look at stress, not all of it is bad. You just need enough in order for your body to be able to adapt to it, especially. Okay. And this is why when we talk about stress, we talk about the bucket. And I'll talk when I'm in consults with patients and I'll say, what's going on with your stress bucket? Because it's like your body can only handle so much stress. And if it can't handle it, the bucket gets full and the bucket starts to overflow. And how does it overflow? It's said that if the bucket's overflowing, then you'll start to have physical symptoms of things that are going on. So that's why you can't avoid all stress in your life. You just need to be able to handle it better. But I would say 99% of people need to decrease the amount of mental stress that they're experiencing in their life, especially. Okay. So let's talk about the physiological response of stress. Okay. Let's talk about how the body responds physiologically to specific types of stress. Now, I talk a lot about this in the inflammation talk, is that there's different types of stress that's taking place. You got chemical stress. When I went over that stool test of that individual, lots of chemical stress that's going on. You have mental stress, what a lot of people think, and the CDC actually says most doctors' visits are due to mental stress. And then you have physical stress that's going on. And physical stress is what's happening specifically to the spine and what's happening to the nerve system, especially. But let's talk about mental stress, because your nerve system is what you have that input of mental stress, and it takes it in through your senses. So you have your eyes, your ears, your skin. I mean, all of those different things take in specific stressors, and it's inputted and processed by the limbic system in your brain. And this is why, too, if you talk about, if you've had trauma, that is stored in your memories, this is why little things can cause a big time mental stress response. But then it's actually carried to your hypothalamus and then to your pituitary gland, which is all in your brain. This is why when I tell people, hey, a lot of your thyroid function, a lot of your menstrual cycle function, all of that requires a response by the pituitary gland to secrete hormones. So where do your hormones originate in? They originate in your nerve system, and that's why your nerve system can't be in a chronically stressed state. So it's processed by that. That's why you've noticed the HPA axis, the hypothalamus to the pituitary, and then to your adrenal glands. And that's carried out by a stress response called adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is what releases cortisol. Okay. And then you have it carried through your nerve system, through your sympathetic nerve system, that causes a fight or flight response. And this goes to your adrenal glands. So you have the release of cortisol, and then you're also going to have the release of adrenaline through your sympathetic nerve system. So those hormones, what happens when that happens? So it's going to cause a response that's going to increase your blood sugar. It's going to start mobilizing blood sugar so that you can use it for energy for that stress event. Like, for example, if a bear is chasing you, you're going to get constriction of blood vessels, especially around the heart and things like that. It's going to slow down significantly your digestive system by decreasing stomach acid. So just think rest and digest or fight or flight. This is a fight or flight response. So it slows down the digestive system, which is why, guys, being in chronic fight or flight can cause so many gastrointestinal issues. You'll notice that your muscles will start to tighten. And this is why when people say, oh, I've been so stressed and my neck and my shoulders feel so tight. Well, this is a response by your body to stress, because what it's trying to do is trying to tighten the muscles in order to protect one of the most important things inside your body, which is actually your nerve system. So it's trying to protect the spine and protect the nerve system. And then you're also going to have a lower immune system response. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And the biggest thing that I'm going to tell you is this is an appropriate response. It's not a mistake that's made by the body. So increased blood sugar, constriction of your blood vessels, lowered stomach acid slows down your digestive system, tightening of muscles, and over time, you're going to have a lowered immune system response. Now, the biggest thing I tell people is this is an appropriate response, because I want you to think of it. If a bear was actually chasing you, this is the actual response that you need. In fact, yes, lowering your immune response is absolutely critical, because if you have a bear that's chasing you and you sprain your ankle, you don't want to get massively inflamed, and you don't want it swelling up and being painful at that time. You want to keep running away from the bear. This is an appropriate response if a bear is chasing you. But here's a question. What happens if it's not a bear, but your brain thinks it's a bear, number one? And number two, what if the bear never stops chasing you? Okay. The biggest thing that I'm going to tell you is this: your body doesn't make mistakes. That's the biggest thing that I can tell you. It adapts. So your body is not making mistakes. It adapts. But what if the bear never stops chasing you? And I want you to think of this. If you had a bear chasing you, and the bear is chasing you, and you knew if the bear gets me, I'm dead, you're going to get slow digestion. You're going to get an increase in blood pressure, increased respiration. And what if after, and you ran into an office building and there happened to be a medical doctor there, and he said, here, come here, let's check you out. And a bear, you just got done running away from a bear, and he looked at your cholesterol, looked at your stress hormones, and then looked at your blood pressure. Well, you probably would have high blood sugars, and you also would have high blood pressure. And at that point, do you need to go on type 2 diabetes medication, and you need to go on blood pressure medication for the rest of your life? Yet that happens so many times where a doctor wants to put them on that medication, but they never ask them, hey, maybe you're stressed. What are you stressed about? Okay. The body's not making a mistake. This is a perfect adaptation to stressors, especially. But if the bear never stops chasing you, even if the bear never stops chasing you in your brain, then there's going to be a long-term response, or I'm going to say long-term adaptation. So what happens if you're suffering with long-term stress? There's going to be a cardiovascular, it's going to hurt the cardiovascular system. You're going to have chronically elevated blood sugars. You might have high blood pressure, and you might have high LDL. Yes, I said that. You might have high LDL. And the reason why is look at how the body manufactures hormones. It manufactures it from cholesterol in order for it to be able to make cortisol. Okay. This is called the sex hormone pathway. And it needs to make that in response to a stress response. So if you're wondering, oh gosh, why is my cholesterol elevating for some reason? I would say, well, look at the number of stressors that you have, number one. And number two, are you getting a lot of tissue damage that could be causing a lot of cholesterol production to try to make up for it as well? So a long-term adaptation is going to affect your blood sugars. It's going to affect your blood pressure, and it's also going to affect your LDL. Now, gastrointestinally, here's a long-term adaptation, because it will slow down the transit of food. It will slow down stomach acid production. Yeah, you can develop things like acid reflux. You can develop a lot of food allergies too, because chronic stress it inhibits the breakdown of food, which means you're not going to break down your proteins very well. If those happen to leak through, you can carry a lot of food allergies as well. And being low in stomach acid, because I've talked a lot about this, about acid reflux medications, how they lower stomach acid, how that can cause a lot of problems with infections because you're not sterilizing your food the way that you're supposed to. The long-term adaptation, how does it affect your hormones? Well, let me just say this, is that it will affect your menstrual cycle. Yes, long-term mental stress and even the stress of overexercise, anything that is always trying to raise cortisol, eventually it's going to be stealing it from progesterone in order to make cortisol. And it's the body's perfect response, because think of this. If a bear is chasing you, you need stress hormone. You don't need a menstrual cycle at that time. So what's more important, survival or having a menstrual cycle? Again, the body never messes up. And what's interesting is you'll notice that a lot of birth control that doctors put on to try to improve the menstrual cycle is a progesterone-based birth control. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Now, what about your thyroid as well? Well, if you look at your thyroid and you look at what the thyroid is making, which is T4, it has to be converted into T3. When someone has a lot of stress that's going on, what increases is something known as reverse T3, which no doctors ever look at. Reverse T3, basically what it is, it's a mirror image of T3, and the body just flips it into a mirror image so that you can't use T3. So instead of using T3, it converts it into reverse T3, which means it's there to actually slow down metabolism and to slow down some of the body processes as you go through a stress response. That's why if you think you have any kind of thyroid issues and things, you should be looking at reverse T3. So you can have menstrual cycle issues, you can have high amounts of reverse T3. And I've seen this on labs as a long-term adaptation to a lot of stressors. What's another long-term adaptation? It's to your immune system, because it lowers an immune system response, which long-term stress can cause issues with infection. And yes, this can even predispose you to having hanging out there a lot more and an increased risk of cancer. Guys, that's why when people have autoimmunity and they give things in order to suppress the immune system, what do they say in the commercial? Long-term use may predispose you to cancer, because long-term stress actually is anti-inflammatory. Just like I said, if you have a bear that's chasing you, a lot of that cortisol can suppress the immune system. I'm going to show you that in just a second. In fact, I'm going to show it to you right now. Okay. This comes from PubMed, Journal of Immunology. This was about 20 years ago. And here's the title of it: Expression of the glucocorticoid receptor. I'm going to talk to you what glucocorticoids are. From the 1A promoter correlates with T lymphocyte sensitivity to glucocorticoid-induced cell death. Okay. Here's what they say. Glucocorticoid hormones cause pronounced T cell apoptosis, your T cells, which is needed for an immune system response, particularly to things like tumor suppression and viral suppression, especially, and it causes apoptosis or cellular death, particularly in immature thymic T cells. So these are the cells that sit in the thymus where they mature. That's why they're called T cells, is they mature within the thymus gland, okay? Now, here's what they say. The relative level of expression of the 1A promoter to the 1B, 1A promoters within a lymphocyte population was found to directly correlate with the susceptibility to glucocorticoid-induced cell death, with the extremely glucocorticoid sensitive CD4 and CD8 thymocytes having the highest level of GR1A promoter activity, okay? So they are talking about high amounts of glucocorticoids, which is going to be cortisol, which is going to be certain stress hormones, and how it actually starts to cause death to certain cells that are responsible for tumor suppression and things like that. So if you go and you look up glucocorticoid, it's any group of corticosteroids, for example, like cortisol, hydrocortisone, example. And this is why when doctors give hydrocortisone to try to be an anti-inflammatory for joint pain or autoimmunity or things like that, just like this is why you can develop problems with type 2 diabetes, insulin sensitivity issues, and all kinds of issues and lowered immune system response. And the reason why is hydrocortisone is a derivative of cortisol. It just looks at it and says, yeah, let's put your body under a tremendous amount of stress, and you're going to have a massive anti-inflammatory response with, but you'll also develop a lot of issues when it comes to your blood sugars and things like that. But you'll also have long-term immune system suppression. Basically what they're doing is they're doing this. They're saying you have a baby that's crying, and the answer is to cut the tongue out of the baby so you don't hear him crying anymore. That may get the baby not to cry anymore, but the problem is it doesn't get to the reason why the baby is crying in the first place, okay? Now, you can measure this immune system activity. This is what I've talked about for such a long period of time, is look at your CD4, CD8 cell count, look at your natural killer cells. This is our immune system panel that we run being a Wellness Way doctor. And if you look at this, you can actually see that people have this person individually has a very low T cell count. So they're low in killer T cells responsible for cancer suppression, tumor suppression, and also viral cell suppression. Low in absolute CD4 cells, which are basically the generals that's coordinating an immune system response specifically to things like viruses, cancer cells, and things like that. So you can see that this person's immune system has absolutely been crushed. I'm not even going to tell you why it was crushed, but you can get this from having a chronic stress response. And yes, because it will suppress the immune system. Now, let me ask you a question. When does someone get mononucleosis? And if you've ever looked at someone who got mono, and it's basically the Epstein-Barr virus infection that's going on. And ask someone who has gotten mono, and they'll say like the same things. They'll say, oh, well, I was super stressed. Oh, I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't taking care of myself. And that's what happens with a chronic stress response. You can get that virus reactivated at a later time because it stays within you forever. And this is associated with chronic fatigue syndrome and even thyroid issues as well. So here's an article that's about 14 years old. And it's titled Stress-Related Epstein-Barr Virus Reactivation. Oh boy. And here's what they say. Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, remains latent in 90% of the patients following primary infection. This is why most people are actually carrying Epstein-Barr virus. And here they found there was a significant difference between the rates of acute infection and reactivation among subjects with elevated cortisol and epinephrine levels, which is a glucocorticoid, which is related to a stress response. So if you want to have, chronic fatigue, you want to have a thyroid issue with, a lot of thyroid destruction and things like that, have a lot of stress and carry a lot of infection that's going on. Okay. So I just went over the physiology of stress, why it's an appropriate response, but why the body, if you never take care of it, there's going to be a long-term adaptation that's taking place. And I know what you're saying, Doc, I get it. What on earth can I do? Okay. So here's the answer. Reduce everything that increases your cortisol exposure, okay? And this is why getting tested is so important, because the only way to know is to actually get tested. But where are these things that can cause a cortisol release? Where are they coming from? Anything that stresses the body, which can be physical, chemical, and mental. Guys, this is the whole idea behind chiropractic, meaning the body has the ability to be well, the body will heal. The body is always trying to adapt. It will adapt into a disease process if there's too many physical, chemical, and mental stressors that's going on. So let's talk about physical, okay? This is why x-rays, guys, are so important. If you look at a side view of someone, an x-ray of a side view, and they're looking to the left, you can see here's their eyes, here's their teeth, here's the back of the head. This is a pretty doggone close to normal x-ray. This right here, if you look at the x-ray on the right, one of the things that you see that a person is carrying a lot of stress in their nerve system. And the reason why I say that is because when there's a normal curve, then the spinal cord is nice and relaxed. And if you lose a curve through injury, putting yourself in a chronic position, so you're just not taking care of it, whenever you start losing that curve, it stresses and stretches the spinal cord. And remember, the brain will perceive that as a stressor. And where's the input of all that stress actually coming from? It's coming to the brain, and it's getting processed by the hypothalamus, which is why, guys, all of your stimulatory hormones are coming from your nerve system as well. So this is why having a good, healthy x-ray is very, very important. But here's another physical stressor that can be huge too, is overexercise. I have been guilty many times of overexercise, and I have exercised to myself into a point of injury, lack of like poor sleep, all of these different things. So overexercise, guys, is a real thing. And in fact, not a lot of people struggle with overexercise, but this is why anytime that you do high intensity type exercise and you do it for a long period of time, you're stimulating a cortisol response. And it can, if you don't recover from it, it can end up biting you in the butt, specifically down the road. So you need good exercises. How do you handle this chemically? Okay. The biggest thing that I would tell you is you got to watch your sugar intake. Watch your sugar intake. Make sure you know what your insulin levels are at, what your A1C is at. Well, nobody usually measures this, but your insulin levels should be at 3 to 5, and your A1C should really be 5.3 or under. Anything over that can cause some problems with some blood sugar issues, can cause some problems with brain deterioration and things like that. And then you can't forget about sleep. You can't forget about sleep, and you need to be sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night. Here's one of the things with exercise. If you love exercising, then you should be sleeping more, because sleep is your recovery. Okay. Now, sometimes people say, Dr. Nate, I can't sleep. I can't shut my brain down. I'm having some issues with that. Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And then when you look at mental stress, can you test your cortisol rhythm? Yes, you can. It's called a Dutch test. And if you look at this person, their cortisol rhythm should be within the black lines, but you can see how high it is, and you can see how much cortisol they're secreting. So this is a person who is massively stressed. So you can test your cortisol rhythm by looking at a Dutch test, and you can see how much cortisol is being released and how much cortisol is being metabolized as well, because you'll see free cortisol, then you can see what how much cortisol you're metabolizing. I will say this, that people with high amounts of metabolized cortisol are usually do have a lot of blood sugar issues and things like that. So you got to test your cortisol rhythm. And are there things that you can do in order to block the stress response? Yes. There are things like California poppy, L-theanine, and chamomile, which are some of the biggest things in order to help you not continually wake up at night at 2 a.m. and not be able to go back to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. So these are things that actually block a mental stress response as well. And sometimes people need to do that for a little while to help their body be able to recover as well. So let me give you guys a couple of mental stress tips. Okay, let me give you a couple of mental stress tips, and these are here to actually help you. The reason why I'm talking about this is I have been in my past, I've been absolutely crushed with mental stress. And here, these are some of the things that I'm speaking from when it comes to my own experience, is that number one, you're not the center of the universe. You're not the center of the universe. And a lot of people miss out on so much because they think everybody cares what they're doing. Everybody's watching them, and people just don't care. And that's actually really good news. You're not the center of the universe, and you got to get over that. I'm not the center of the universe. Number two, not every event has to be a bear. I just went over this with my wife, just the other day. I was like, hey, honey, have you ever seen like people who like everything, like they may say you pulled out in front of them, but you're like 100 feet away. And as soon as you like barely pull out front of, they like have this huge response and they start yelling at you. Well, I would imagine probably every event that happens in their life, they're treating it like a bear. They are handling stress. Their stress bucket is so full. I want you to think of this. Every event that happens in your life, you're the umpire, and you get to call it a ball or a strike. It's not stress until you call it stress as the umpire. So not every event has to be a bear. You're in control on what you get to call it. Number three, please, please, please stop micromanaging. If you are a micromanager, please stop, okay? And the reason why is if you've ever been a micromanager, I'm going to tell you this, and it's not necessarily a good thing, because I used to be a micromanager, and you know what? No one wanted to be around me, and I exhausted everyone around me. I exhausted my team. Don't just stop being a micromanager. Not everything has to be perfect, and you have to just stop trying to control everything. Because you know what? If you are, you're exhausting to everyone who's around you, and you need to get that fixed. Number four, don't make other people's issues your issues. All right. Don't make other people's issues your issues, or don't try to make issues that you have with another person and have other people take that as an issue. Guys, I will tell you that if you do that, you have an issue with a person and you try to get your tribe to have an issue with that person, those people that's your tribe, they don't want to be around you anymore, because life is complicated enough. And if you try to make your issues and try to turn them into other people's issues as well, no one's going to want to be around you. I've experienced this personally, especially owning gyms and things like that. And if someone has an issue with me and then they try to rally the troops and make it, and they want everyone else to have an issue with it as well, I will get rid of that person as quickly as possible. And the reason why is because if you have a problem with the person, you should never, ever have another person take that up as well. Because life is hard enough to try to manage on your own. They shouldn't have to try to remember the issue that you had with that other person. So don't make other people's issues, don't make them your issues. You don't have to do that. And the last thing I'm going to say is you probably need more self-reflection than you do self-care. I'm going to talk about this in just a second. So what can you do, or what can you take for mental stress? Yes, there's a lot of things. L-theanine, specifically L-theanine, can help quite a bit, especially if a person has a really hard time staying asleep at night, because it will help to increase GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It will help to increase production or sensitivity to it. Ashwagandha can be a great one as well. Ashwagandha is great for the brain, and it's also can help with if you're having a problem with cortisol rhythm, especially if you can't fall asleep at night, you can't wake up in the morning, you probably need to shift your cortisol rhythm over by about a couple of hours. Now, does betaine hydrochloric acid, do you take that for mental stress? No, it's not going to help with mental stress, but it will help with the effects of mental stress, especially when you talk about absorption and protein breakdown and things like that. But there's other things that are very calming and relaxing: valerian, California poppy, kava, CBD oil. Do you guys need to be on all of that? Absolutely not. We usually will pick out what the best thing that will work for people. Even passion flower and things like that can be great, because they can be very calming. They can be very relaxing as well. But before you want to run and dump a bunch of things inside you, I would say is that start to work on self-reflection and start to work on maybe some issues that you might be having of why you keep calling everything a stressor as well. Okay. Now, some of you probably do need a lot of California poppy. So here's what I want you to do. You go to my link tree and I put up there the Wellness Way store. Okay. So you can go ahead and you can click on that Wellness Way store. Here's what you do. Create an account. While you're logged into that account, you can use my code. I don't know how long I want to do this, because I don't want you to turn into taking a bunch of things for things and not working on improving your life, specifically not working with the Wellness Way doctor who can guide and lead you in the right direction. So what you'll do is create an account while you're logged in, and you get what you need. Let's say you want to get California poppy, then use the code 5058 and use it at checkout, and that will give you access to those things. And I may take this down really quickly, but but we'll see, especially. Okay. Now, here's what I want to say. If you need a mental health day, then more often than not, you might be in need of more self-reflection than you need rest. Have you ever seen, people who are like, oh, I need a mental health day, but they never self-reflect and they keep sabotaging things over and over again? What do I mean about self-reflection? Every night when I lay down, I always reflect and I say, how did my day go? How did my day go? And is there anything that I need to change, or is there anything that I did wrong that I need to make right with the other person? And if I need to do that, then the next day I'm going to work on making it right. Because if you don't, and you don't have any self-reflection, then a lot of what you do is you just keep spreading around a bunch of creating stress for other people as well. And that's why when you talk about self-reflection, this is very, very important. And if you're always stressed out all the time, then you probably need more self-reflection than you need self-care as well. This is one of my favorite quotes, and it comes from Lou Holtz. He said this: it's not the load that breaks you down, it's just the way that you carry it. So, and I want you to think of this. If I said, I want you to carry a bowling ball, and you're like, yeah, it's only 7 pounds. And I said, would you rather carry it over your body, or would you rather carry it out in front of you? If you carry it out in front of you with the straight arm, it's only 7 pounds, but you might only be able to carry it for maybe a minute or two. But if you had the opportunity to carry it here and the biggest advantage that you had, you might be able to carry that all day. So just remember this, when you talk about the load, when you talk about the stress, it's not the stress that breaks you down. It's the way that you carry that stress. This is why this is so, so important. So guys, coming up, if you're from the Chicagoland area, our next event is our inflammation event. This is on Tuesday, June 25th at 6 o'clock p.m. This is huge when it comes to stress, because guys, if you're carrying a lot of things out of inflammatory triggers, it's going to cause an increase in stress response. This is going to affect big time how you're able to handle stress, how you're able to carry stress. This is going to affect tremendously your hormones and everything else. And this is why you have to start looking deeper. You have to start looking deeper, guys, because stress, whether it's mental, chemical, or physical, is absolutely huge. And this is why, guys, if we've decreased stress on the nerve system, this is why people's reflux got better, or this is why, people were able to get pregnant finally. And it's not witchcraft. It's just we're lowering stressors, because as you lower stressors, the body always is in a better position if you start lowering stressors. If that stress bucket starts to get filled up, then it starts to spill over in the form of symptoms and things like that. So a lot of what we do is being able to lower down, as empty people's stress buckets so that their body is able to adapt in the place, in a way that it's supposed to. So guys, get registered for that. All you have to do is just go to our Linktree account. You'll see that as the first thing. It'll probably be shaking a little bit, and get registered for that inflammation event. This is absolutely huge, is get registered for that inflammation event. If you get registered for that inflammation event, that'll be your first place in where you start working with me on a one-on-one basis, especially. So get registered for that. It's going to be an awesome, amazing event. We're going to have that coming up. It's going to be great. And guys, I can't wait to see you guys there. So got stress? I just went over, here's how it can kill you. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this. I hope you got benefit from it. And if you didn't, go back and rewatch it again, and this time pay a little bit more attention. But stress is absolutely huge. And if you can do something in order to help reduce those stressors, it'll give you a longer life, a happier life, and a healthier life as well. So guys, I appreciate you so much for being on here. And if you found benefit from doing this, make sure that you share this video with other people. I know that it will help them. And as I always say, guys, I love you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I always say, remember who you are. Be well, and we'll see you soon.